Back from our travels, 2 weeks away, although we only took 1 week of the show off. And it's back to English countryside, having been to Cologne and Milan and Budapest and almost Brussels, and then Tenerife in the Canary Islands. What a contrast between those adventures. Oh, what a glorious day. Sunshine, sunshine. I know we've got some rather more challenging weather on the way, I hear. Let me get a sketchbook image to start the walk. I'd pick a few blackberries, but yeah, these have gone over now. No blackberry for breakfast then. Right, pools of light today, that's what I'm doing. I do like my pools of light. A sketchbook picture along the path. What have we got? Oh, blimey, that's bright. Shutter speed, 2500. f3.2, 160 ISO, and there we go. A sketchbook picture to start the show.
It's hard to explain it. It's more than anything you could ever imagine. It's such a special place. The horses were one of the main reasons I went in the first place, but the thing that keeps me going back is the people. And every time I see them, I get to know them a little better. We've become quite close. I have so much respect and admiration for their way of life.
The foreword.
That's Claire Thomas, who I will come back to in a moment. Claire is my guest for us to listen to as we walk this path together, or our paths, or wherever you are in the world. It's been chicken jalfrezi this last month, it really has. And that, my friend, is the James family rhyming slang for crazy, in terms of the stuff that's been on, the stuff that's been happening every month. And here we're about to go from August to September in a hop, skip and a jump. I say something like, hasn't the month gone quickly? But this one, particularly so, I think. As I say, I've been on my travels, and this week, if you're an extra miler, you'll have travelled with me in the reflection episodes to Cologne and Milan and beautiful Budapest. Lots to say about my travels, and in many ways, I'm hoping it may inspire you to think about writing your own travel logs, along with the pictures that you make. Anyway, Extra Milers, shows for you to listen to over the last week. And then this month, coming in September, I'll be on my travels again. Blimey, Neil, you must have a suitcase prepared for each week. It's not quite like that. But this time, yes, to wonderful, sublime Scotland for 2 weeks of our annual photographic retreat to the Highlands. I'll obviously be recording a special show which will air in the month coming. Probably, I would have thought, in October. Just as I go on my American West to East road trip with the Queen Mary bringing me back, with Marissa Roth, the photojournalist. Go on, Neil, you've changed. You've gone all show busy and travelly. It's like you've turned into, don't say it. It's like you've turned into, don't you dare say it. It's like you've turned into a travel influencer. Oh, it has felt a little bit like that at times, but I do try to take you on these journeys, and I've certainly been busy with my camera. The X100V has been my travelling companion throughout. If you're interested, I'll throw a couple of travel pictures onto the show page today. So I'm following up travel with more travel, and I suppose next week too with my guest, the much loved across the years national geophotographer DeWitt Jones. However, I am revisiting Egypt this week, sadly not in person. Across Zoom for this one to talk with a former guest, not so long ago actually, nearer the start of the year, which has flown, yes, the photojournalist Claire Thomas. Now Claire, when she spoke with us, talked about her work in the field of conflict, when we last spoke that is, and also this tremendous compassionate view that she has through her photography, which was the reason that she set an assignment back in March called Humanity. But today, she is back to talk about her first monograph, which is a big, big deal for photographers. It's a way of saying, I've arrived to a degree, but more than that, it's a way of saying, I've something very important to share with the world. And in this case, on this occasion, it is a book, which I will link to, about the eagle hunters of Mongolia. A place that clearly I'm very keen on and excited about, because we're taking the show there next year with, of course, a team of photo walking explorers. But I want to talk with Claire, who is based in Egypt, yes, just in case that bit wasn't so clear. I want to talk with her about her multiple trips out to this extraordinary country to learn about the people and the culture and the skill that it takes to hunt with these majestic birds by your side and on your arm. But then we take a real left turn for the second part of the interview, because we talk about witchcraft, an entirely different topic, of course, and one that seems, in this day and age, to be something that, well, surely doesn't earn a place in modern day thinking. Though, yes, I appreciate culturally in more corners of the world than I would care to accept, it is still a thing. Not the practice of it, necessarily, no, but the imprisonment or ostracization, where those who are accused of being witches, and it's women mainly, but there are some men too, are sent from their communities, from their loved ones, from their families, and they go to live in camps. So what makes this truly odd is that the accusations can be made with no proof at all, no real reason, yet an accusation is all that it apparently needs. We talk about that story in the second part of our conversation today. So 2 life stories, a very different focus today, seen through the lens of a guest I was very keen to have back, Claire Thomas.
Today on The Photo Walk.
That's always been my goal with photography, is to be able to try and do something positive with it, to inform, and change people's perceptions. The mountains are spectacular, and you get to ride horses as much as you want. A lot of them say it's like a baby. I love my eagle like a baby. It means everything. They keep it in the family, inside the home. I think it's also important as photographers that we sometimes put down the camera and just witness these things, because you experience it in such a different way. It's hard to imagine that today in the 21st century that women and men actually are accused of witchcraft. The professor was telling me that his mother was accused of being a witch because he was doing well in school.
That's Claire Thomas, my guest on the Photo Walk show today. Alongside her, I'll be sharing some of your letters, your stories, your thoughts that you've sent in about life and adventures with a camera. I'll peek into that mailbag in a moment just to see what's coming up, but before that, I want to personally thank those who are Patreon members of our community, our extra milers, because your belief in this show and your desire to keep us walking together week after week after week is the why and the how of this podcast, so thank you. Every week there's an extra show available through Patreon, which features now a second part of my conversation with my guest, and there will be a further chat with Claire today. Chats also with those in the community, and a new feature, Reflections, my own take on making pictures and a life behind the lens, which airs Monday through Friday. Thank you also to my sponsor, arthelper.ai, which helps you to sell your photos online by making the posts and the mock-ups and the marketing emails for you. If you've ever thought, well, I'd like to sell my work, but Neil, I don't have a clue where to start. Well, I recommend arthelper.ai. They'll do the tricky stuff for you, and you'll get 30 days free with code PHOTOWALK when you go to arthelper.ai. Right, on the show, Adriano Henney writes about publishing your work. Why do it? I think it'll become very clear. Bob of the Desert is dodging those jumping cholla thingies in Arizona, but wrote in with what I think is one of the most honest letters I've received of late, in terms of personal sharing. And Gavin Perry flies into Complaints Corner. Well, at least he would if we hadn't effectively cancelled his flight. All will be revealed, as they say. So, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Did you know I almost went to the famous Garibaldi metro station in Milan a couple of weeks ago? Well, I would have done, but on the line I was travelling each day, it was closed for summer. Foiled, I thought. I'm going to get Gavin Perry to complain for me. Walking shoes? Check. Have you got some spare film or an extra SD card? Check. Well, let's walk. The letters, the emails, the comments you leave gives our community a real uniqueness. Your thoughts about walking and creativity and photography provides a A very welcome respite from the noise of this world, as together during this show we put some miles under our feet and make a picture or two to remind us of where those footprints were left. Look at this. Right, another pool of light. I love this, the way the sun is streaming through the canopy of those trees just behind me and striking this tree. Let me get the picture. 950 shutter, f3.2, 160 ISO, and I want to try and isolate the tree a bit more. These leaves in the foreground are lighting up too much for me. I like the mysteriousness of just a touch of light. Just a touch of light there. Fabulous. Where were we? Oh yes, letters. Thank you for those that have been arriving in. I think we're going to have a good busy mail... Busy? Neil, you don't like that word. Well, we'll call it that. A good busy mailbag for autumn and winter coming up. Of that, I know. If you want to send in some pictures that you've been making along your trails and stories that you've written alongside them, then send them to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. Right, first letter of the week. It's from Adriano Henney, who's been busy while we've had our annual show break. Dear Neil, I've been filling in the time going through the archive of podcasts while you're away on your well-deserved break. And as I only joined as an extra miler this year, there's a lot to go through. There's a lot of shows and a lot of extra miles. Your wonderful podcasts have become a part of my morning routine, so I need to get my daily fix. Let me just say, and I'm sorry if this sends you scurrying behind your well-worn sofa of embarrassment, that your style of presentation, the prepared radio voice with its deep, mellifluous tones, reminds me of the wonderful Bob Harris. The way you conduct your conversations is simply addictive. And yes, I said conversations because to my mind they're so far removed from interviews in the way they're constructed and delivered, making them stand out from the crowded podcast space as a beacon of broadcasting perfection. Thank you. That's it. It needed to be said. You can come out now. Adriano, you're very, very kind. And I am feeling very Englishly embarrassed, if there is such a phrase. I know Bob Harris, who you talk of. I shall need to leave, I'll leave a link, or maybe I can find something from the old grey whistle test, the show that he presented in the, it would be 70s and 80s, wouldn't it? I'm sure there must be something on YouTube. But I worked with Bob many, many years ago. A fantastic broadcaster, and what a voice. Now, being compared in the same sentence, I think you're being very generous, but certainly I think Bob's beautiful tones. That voice is just gorgeous. Really, for anybody British and mature enough to remember Bob from the old grey whistle test days, I'll find that video then. Pop it on the page. I mean, come on, he is a legend. First time, radio story now, I ever had to follow him on the wireless. His show stopped, mine began, and my imposter syndrome was on DEFCON 1, because I'd grown up listening to Dear Bob. Anyway, says Adriano, back to the episode that prompted me to write this letter. I was listening to Gary Williams' story about how he produced his book on Camden Passage, and I recognised similarities with my own experiences recently creating and producing my own book. You ask us to write in and share our projects and photographs with you, so I thought I'd do just that. Prompted by that episode, albeit one that's nearly a year old. Having exhibited a collection of black and white photographs of Venice, I wanted to preserve the project in book form once the exhibition was over. I take my hat off to you on this one. You made pictures of Venice and you exhibited them in Venice. I mean, wow, what an honour. But as those avenues appeared inaccessible to me, I elected to self-publish. I've been on a couple of printing and bookmaking workshops with Eddie Ephraim's, who writes a monthly column on photo bookmaking for Black and White Photography magazine. Eddie also mentors and collaborates with photographers on book production, and I think he's recently worked on one with Paul Hudson, who's appeared on the show. Yes, he has. As he specialises in particular in black and white photography, and as I'd worked with him in the past, I approached him to help produce my book. The idea behind the book wasn't to create something akin to an exhibition catalogue, but rather to produce a book that complemented the concept behind the Venice project and the exhibition. We mulled over a number of options. Eventually we settled on the idea of a short-run limited edition where the reader, when looking through the images, would experience something a bit like they might during a very personal, intimate walk through the less cliché parts of Venice. Where was I that day? Adriano, could you not have called? Neil, I'm walking around Venice. The less cliché parts. Why don't you come and join me? Yes, please. I will hop on a jet now. As was the case for Gary's book, sequencing was key to helping to achieve that. How best to achieve it all was a lengthy collaborative process that took just over a year, actually, from start to finish. As I wanted the photographs to be as faithful a representation of those displayed at the exhibition, the quality of the paper and black and white reproduction was critical. And so working one-to-one with Eddie offered me much greater flexibility to explore different formats and papers and binding. Oh, this sounds like a lot of fun. This is the way you want to spend your time. And most importantly, gave me access to printers using specialized processes developed for printing black and white photographs. The project and book were discussed on you and Ross's Biblioscapes podcast in June, and I attach a couple of photos. Plus there's a short video on my website too, in case you're interested to have a look. I shall put all those links on the show page today, definitely. I'm always interested to see videos, so yes, there'll be a link for that one as well. In terms of publishing and self-publishing, there is a special event planned for extra milers in January, actually, which I appreciate is a while off yet, but going by my aren't the months going quickly thing at the start of today's show, it'll be here before you know it. So if you've ever thought of publishing your work, and in particular would like some info and guidance on design, etc., Wednesday, Jan 14th, in the evening, UK time, just pop it in your diary. Just reserve the date there. Just saying, as they say.
Through everything, here we stand, hand in hand, I'm yours.
The photo walk show of a Friday. Me with my camera and microphone, and you hopefully with your camera. I don't know, where are you listening right now? Not everybody listens while they're walking along with a podcast. I know we have quite a few commuters, and I've had letters in the past that have said I shut my eyes and I use it to pretend that I'm actually not on the, I'll insert the words, pinstriped express, or well, you wouldn't be driving, would you, closing your eyes? But yeah, on the trains, the commute into insert your city here. Right, Claire Thomas. As I said at the start of the show, she guested earlier this year, and we talked much about her work in the field of conflict and the rather unusual journey that brought her to photography. Suffice to say, she is now a photographer and a documenter and a writer too, as you'll find out in the Extra Mile edition today to accompany this show. So we'll not need to do a bio to start our chat as such, as we usually do. So I want to, as the kids with a Z say, dive right into a new book she has coming out, which you'll learn about in our conversation. It's a book that immediately caught my eye because it's one that she's made visiting, stand by, Mongolia. Not such a surprise, I know, because I mentioned it at the start of the show, but yeah, Mongolia, beautiful place. Well, I'm about to find out. Because as you know, we're going there in 2026, almost a year from now, actually, in September, with the Photo Walk show and some wonderful community explorers. So this is a chance, really, to learn more about the people we are going to be spending time with, the eagle hunters and the farmers of this magical far-off land, Mongolia. But if you're not coming to Mongolia, which you kind of will be anyway, even if you're not physically going to be there with us, with the show, with me, with Lynn, then we'll of course be recording a very special from Mongolia next year. But this book, I think, and what she talks about, the sincere passion she has for the people of this magical country really comes across in our conversation. I think it's the first part of 2 parts of a chat today, which in terms of story couldn't be any more different. There are certainly 2 very different tales today. A visit to Ghanaian witch camps in a while, but first, all aboard these wonderful old Eastern European tackle-anything small troop buses to find a part of the world where you can actually hear yourself think. Claire, I knew it wouldn't be long before we were chatting again. As I said last time, so much more to chat about. And we will begin with Altai, Hunters and Herders of Mongolia, a book that's been years in the making. I don't know how many years. You say years, but what do you mean by that?
I started it in 2019.
Oh, okay, quite a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. And, it really is a project that's very close to my heart. So Thank you for starting by talking about that. I've been going back to the same families basically since 2019. I've been twice this year. Oh no, is it? Yes, it is twice. Or once this year. I'm going back in October, same families, and last year I was there a couple of times. So it's a special project. It's now available for pre-order. So we're hoping that it'll be delivered by Christmas.
The fact that you go back to this place, there's obviously a reason why you go. And last time we talked, I mentioned to you that we were going to go with a photo walk show. We're not going until next September, so it's a while until we go, and you'll have been 8 times by then. And I wonder what it is for you that makes it that has this draw, because you've been photographing there since 2019. You visit the same families. I know Mongolia and the people within the country are famously good at hospitality and looking after you.
Yes.
But there must be something more than just that.
Yeah, there's many things that get me back to the Altai Mountains specifically, but Mongolia has so much to offer. Like each part of the country is like visiting a different country completely. Yeah. So last year, for the first time, I also went to the taiga to visit the reindeer herders in the north, which was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And of course, they're a different ethnicity. They have a different culture, but they're all nomadic people. So for me, in the Altai, I mean, the families, they live very close to nature. I think that's one of the draws for me. So I was thinking about this earlier, and there are many things that draw people to the Altai Mountains or to Western Mongolia. For most people, I would say it's the eagles, because this is a fascinating tradition, of course, and it kind of steals the show. But the main thing that took me there in the first place were the horses. Of course, I grew up riding horses. I love horses and all animals. And I think, I must have seen pictures probably in National Geographic of these Kazakh men dressed in animal fur, holding an enormous eagle from the back of a horse. And it just stuck in my mind forever, subconsciously, really. And I always wanted to go and see it for myself. And it's hard to explain it. It's more than anything you could ever imagine. It's such a special place. Of course, the horses were one of the main reasons I went in the first place. But the thing that keeps me going back is the people. Yeah. And every time I see them, I get to know them a little better. We've become quite close. I have so much respect and admiration for their way of life, and not just the eagle hunters. Some of the families don't have eagles. They are herding families. So, their life is quite challenging. They everything they need comes from the animals. They do everything themselves. And I am very drawn to that. And it's kind of an escape from the real world in many ways. The nature is beautiful. The mountains are spectacular. It's cool. The weather's cold, which I really appreciate. And, you get to ride horses as much as you want. And there's no fences or trails necessarily. You just go wherever you want. So sometimes we'll just ride out on our own. Sometimes we'll also ride with the eagle hunters, which is probably one of the most, if not the most spellbinding experience you could have. You're going to love it.
I saw the picture of you on horseback. Now, Claire, I do not ride. The last time I rode was on, you're going to be ashamed of me, and I will see your furrowed brow any second now when I say it was on Blackpool Beach on a donkey many, many years ago. I don't think they do donkey riding now. I think it's sort of is it frowned upon now? I'm not.
Oh, I hope not.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, I was useless. I've ridden a camel. Now, you come from Egypt, so you know, or you live in Egypt now, so you know that sort of riding, I'm sure. And I would equate my donkey experience to my camel experience, which shouldn't really be the same, should it, really? But when I saw that picture of you majestically riding that horse with an eagle on your arm, I thought, well, if ever there was a reason over the next 12 months for me to learn how to ride, that would be it.
Yes, definitely. But either way, you know what? You're going to be doing that anyway. Yeah. You're all going to be getting on horseback and holding an eagle. They insist on it generally.
The other thing they insist on, I'm told by Lynn, who works with me with the travel business that we now have, is that they are famous for their vodka. Yeah. When they do the toasts. I
believe it's something like if they open a bottle of vodka, it's not polite to stop until it's finished.
Anyway, we shouldn't be talking about the vodka. We've talked on this show about Mongolia, really as that place of childhood, that fantasy place where we all thought of it as such a long way away. You know, if you got the grump with your mum and dad, you'd say, I'm off to Mongolia. And you'd no idea on a map where it was, but it just sounds so exotic and so far away. It is that draw, isn't it? Which I love.
Me too. And I find it quite fascinating. And this is something I talk about in my book, how things are changing quite rapidly there. You see modernization creeping in, but in a subtle way still, you know, like they're still not connected by paved roads or anything like that. It's still a very bumpy but exciting and beautiful drive to get out to where the families are. But I mean, this is all after like a 2 or 3 hour flight from the capital out to Olgi. Yeah. So, and that flight, there's nothing. It's just mountains and steppe the whole way. So you really, even before you've landed in the town of Olgi, you feel like you're out there. And then Olgi is like a very pretty town. It's cute, it's small, very friendly. So there are more tourists going, but it's still small in numbers, you know. And of course, everybody generally goes during the Eagle Festival, which is beautiful and stunning and fascinating to see. Some of the other things I've noticed is like one of the villages that we are based close to is called Ulan Khus. And when I first went, there was no paved road going through this village. It was just a track. And so you'd always see men dressed in traditional clothes riding their horse to the shop. They'd be going to visit relatives or whatever, and they'd get there on horseback. That was normal. But now you see more motorbikes. You still see horsemen everywhere, but there's more motorbikes. And kids are on their phones. Not all of them, but you do see, you see toddlers on their phones. So it's, they're still in the 21st century, of course. But then one of the master eagle hunters, perhaps you'll meet him, actually. He's quite well known. His name is Khairat Khan. And he receives a lot of people. He's well known. He trains other eagle hunters because it's poetry in motion to see him working with an eagle. It's unlike a lot of the others. But anyway, he'll be riding his pony to go and round up his sheep, and he never wears a saddle. He just jumps on his pony and he trots off to go and get the sheep and goats. And then he'll stop and he'll have a ping on his phone, and he'll stop and read his phone. And I asked him once, like, what are you doing on your phone? Is it like Facebook or what? And it's like eagle hunting chats, amongst the eagle hunters. They're like, I saw a fox, this area, there's a few in this area, it's a good place for hunting. So it's kind of nice how technology is being integrated into that.
I was disappointed to hear you say that they're looking on their phones, but I think the fact they're not going to Facebook makes me that does deliver some joy to me that it is actually some sort of app to do with eagle hunting. We should actually put this straight for those that are fairly new to the show, thinking eagle hunting, that sounds... Are we hunting the eagles now? That's not what it's about, is it?
No, it's a common misconception, sure, because I suppose they should be called falconers. I don't know. Like they're not hunting the eagles. They're using the eagles to hunt for them. And it's a beautiful relationship. Not that I know much about birds. I know a lot more about horses. So I can tell that the horses are very well cared for, treated well, and trained well. But the eagles, apparently, of course, I had no background with the birds of prey before going to Mongolia. But apparently it's very, very difficult to keep these or eagles specifically, in captivity and feed them in a way that means they can still hunt, because it's very common to overfeed them. And by doing so, they can no longer fly. So Khairat Khan actually taught us how he does it, how it has to be done. And they will wash all the blood away from the meat, so that the eagle gets not quite enough nutrition, but it feels full, right. But then it's still ready to hunt. So it maintains that instinct. So it's very clever. It's a very fine balance. And this is knowledge that's, they're not taught this. It's just passed down through generations, and they do it exquisitely well. It's fascinating. And they're very precious, a lot of them say it's like a baby. I love my eagle like a baby. It means everything. They keep it in the family, inside the home. They love their eagles.
There's almost a sadness that I feel that they create this amazing bond, this incredible bond that you talk of. Maybe not everybody, but most people form this bond. But at some stage, they have to let the eagle go back into the wild. And I was thinking born free and so on and all those cliches. But that's how I felt about the eagles, this incredible bond, this beautiful bond between the handler and the eagle. And then one day they have to let them go. Yeah,
that's the tradition. And I guess it's like a sign of respect, and they let the birds go back to nature. So, these eagles have to know how to hunt, and hunt well in order to survive. And then I think it's usually between 5 to 10 years that they release them.
It's a long time, though, isn't it? Have you ever photographed one of those moments where they're...
No.
Can you imagine?
No, I would love to see that. I would.
I wonder if it's an intensely private moment that they don't share.
I don't know. I guess so. I think it would be quite difficult to just catch them in that time where they are doing it, because they generally will have just one eagle at a time. Yeah. And I'm sure it's very emotional when they do it.
I bet.
And I think the bird probably does try to follow them home.
No, I know that would be the heartbreaking moment for me. It really would.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it?
I think it's a bold and a very important thing to make a monograph for a photographer. This is your first, isn't it? And as I look at what's on my shelves, just in front of me, there's a real weight. I don't mean a physical weight. I mean a real weight, a personal weight to these books. Did you feel any kind of pressure when making this work? Did you know it was going to become your first monograph?
Not in the beginning. I guess, my goal in the beginning was more about getting images that tell a story, and also I'd hoped that some of the images would be suitable to be released as limited edition fine art prints, which thankfully they were. After they were published in the New York Times, then, they gained more exposure. And then it was after that I started to think about the possibility of creating a book. That was 2020, I guess, or 2021. And then I was approached by a couple of publishers interested in, producing this body of work. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. And I'm so grateful now, because I've had much more time to develop this material over different seasons. I think it's really important to show the different seasons. I think winter is my favorite. Autumn, winter is my favorite. Wow. But what was missing until this year for me was I didn't have any photographs. I had never gone out with an eagle hunter when they're actually hunting, because most of the time they're training the birds. It's sort of magical, because it happened so much quicker than I expected. They take the hood off the eagle and it's gone. I couldn't see the animal anywhere near as quickly as the eagle. It all kind of happened before I'd really noticed what had happened, But we went up on one of the hunts. We went high up into the mountains with a 12-year-old girl who I think is remarkable. She's such a fierce rider and a hunter. But it was her relative, this 18-year-old guy, who had the eagle. And yeah, we saw the fox, the bird flew down, caught the fox instantly, and then we ran down to see. And of course, by the time I got there, I thought the fox would be dead. I thought the eagle killed it instantly, but no, that defeats the purpose, because they want the eagle, they want the pelt to be intact. So the hunter has to get to it as quickly as possible. He galloped on his horse down a near vertical slope. Like, it was incredible. And then the hunter gets the bird off the fox with some other meat, some rabbit meat. But anyway, the fox escaped. Yeah, I'm not sure the hunter was very happy, but I guess
the fox lived another day.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the girls that are involved in this, because there has been a famous film, of course, hasn't there?
The Eagle Huntress.
Of the Eagle Huntress, because it's not just a man's domain, this, is it?
No, it's not. And more girls and young women are learning how to do it, and they do terrifically. Yeah, this little girl, her name is Karim. I'm hoping to make a documentary about her. It's been done, of course, but I still want to try in the future, because I think she's a very interesting person, more so because of her riding skills. She's 12, and she's a very accomplished rider in a way that, like, all the other families in the valley know her, and they know that they describe her as a mountain goat on a horse. She's very cool. So it's becoming more common.
We often talk about the fact that a story may have been done or made, but it's not been made by you, and that's what then makes it uniquely yours. Who is the striking person on the front cover of this book? It's a beautiful picture of a handler at one with their eagle, and when you talked about art prints, immediately this is what you mean, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. So that is Arkalak. He's one of the hunters. He was 12 when I took that picture. It's all documentary style, so we don't try to stage anything. We just capture the moment. And he just happens to be like in the perfect position all of the time with like this perfect expression. And it's been really interesting to see him grow up. Essentially, he's now 17. So we rode with him earlier this year, and he was an amazing eagle handler then. I mean, I didn't know any better, so I just thought this is normal. He was there. His dad would take the eagle up the mountain, and Arkalak calls. The eagle comes down, lands perfectly on his arm, like effortlessly, flawless. Just lands. He feeds it. That's it. I just assumed that's the norm. But when I went to the Eagle Festival last year, it's not the norm. It's not at all. Most of them, like the eagles will land past them, or they don't land so perfectly or whatever. I mean, many of them do. Of course, these guys are amazing. But Arkalak, to me, stands out as something quite special. And now he's just become better and better, more and more accomplished.
It must be an awe-inspiring thing watching an eagle come at you from the air. I mean, these are huge, beautiful, majestic creatures, and yet they're coming at you at a rate of knots. What does that feel like? Because you photograph those moments for this book.
Yes, absolutely. But I'm not sure I'd want to be the person with the eagles coming to land. I'm quite glad I'm the one photographing it.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely awe-inspiring. But, sometimes I think it's also important as photographers that we sometimes put down the camera and just witness these things, because you experience it in such a different way. You don't really appreciate the moment in the same way. But it's a balance. You really want to get the shot. And probably the one time that you don't photograph it is the time that it'll be something really epic. But it's very, very fun to photograph. And of course, you have to be very quick, because it's all over very quickly. So,
well, since you mentioned the word settings, I won't feel so squeamish about saying a geeky question. What sort of kit are you using when you're photographing in these scenes? Because we've got the beautiful landscape, which is absolutely gorgeous. Yep. Then you've got these striking portraits that you've been making, which are absolutely gorgeous. And then you've got these moments of these documentary moments where you spend time with the families and you take part in farming and all the things that they do. I would imagine that the kit bag must be like the proverbial kitchen sink, surely.
No, actually, not at all. I shoot almost everything. Well, in the beginning, I was always shooting with my Nikon D850, which I absolutely love, and 24 to 70 millimeter lens.
Oh, okay. So no super long 300, 400, 500 millimeter lenses, right? Okay,
no,
so
I take a 70 to 200 as well.
Yeah. But otherwise 24 to 70.
I'd say 90% of the shots are captured on that. Yeah. And then, when you drive out into the mountains, maybe you'll see some herders in the distance. Then you really want to have the longer lens. When the eagles are flying, I'd rather get physically closer. Otherwise, I find it too difficult. It's too fast if I've got the long lens. So I typically shoot, I think I shot all of those with the 24 to 70. So 2 camera bodies, 2 lenses. That's it. Travel as light as you can. Yeah. Does your approach to photographing this monograph, this book, this body of work that you've been making, how much does that differ from how you document in the conflict zones that we talked about last time, or the humanitarian stories? Does your approach radically change? I know the situation's entirely different, but does your approach as an artist, does that change? I guess with this type of work, I am looking for beautiful moments as well. Of course, there are many. They're very easy to find. But my approach doesn't change, really, other than I have much more time. I spend more time with the families, and a lot of the time is not shooting, just having tea, wine, food, whatever, getting to know the families. And that's the crucial thing for me, because then everybody lets their guard down. They sort of forget that the camera is even there. And they're so welcoming, these families. You love it. They're very open to being photographed. They find joy in being photographed. And then, of course, I take the prints with me next time, and they love it, and they make fun of each other. And the wife will be telling her husband, "Why are you always wearing the same shirt?" But they do enjoy being photographed. So no, I would say my approach is very similar, other than, I have much greater luxury of time, which helps a lot to capture those striking, calm, beautiful moments, and more portraits. I love doing portraits. Of course, when I'm in a conflict zone, it's just, less so about that. But still, I'm looking for expressions and to tell the human story about whatever is the situation, really. But it's faster. Did you take a background? It looked like there were backdrops at times, but you might say, no, Neil, of course I didn't. No flash, no backdrops. All natural light? All natural light. Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. I know. Mongolia has the best light. That's the beauty of autumn. Dramatic skies. Yeah. I loved it. That dark. Oh God, it's just fantastic. And a lot of the times that when we'd be sitting with the hunters waiting to go out riding with the eagles, and I'd be getting frustrated, like, the time is going on, we're going to lose the light, shouldn't we be going? I don't know, because, you spend time getting to know them, drinking tea, my guide is catching up with them. But these things have a natural rhythm, and it always happens that we end up going out at the perfect time for the light. And, of course, low light is beautiful to a certain point. But I don't take a tripod. I might this time. I've never taken a tripod. It's such a bulky thing to have, but for you could do some stunning night photography there. Beautiful skies. Yeah, uninterrupted, unpolluted. Yeah, absolutely. What do you hope the book's going to achieve then? Because it's a culture that, it's not fading, this culture. I mean, I know you've said that it's modernizing, but it's not fading. I mean, if somebody picked up Altai off the bookstore shelf, what are you hoping they take away from the pages? I hope they learn about, this beautiful tradition, of course, but more than that, I really want people to take away the other aspects of this way of life, the herding lifestyle, the women, I want people to know what it's like to live, like, how do they live? They don't all live in yurts. It's too cold in winter to live in the gers. And I hope people see how these kind of cultures and traditions have to be preserved, and in order to do that, you have to protect the environment. And, of course, they are impacted greatly by climate change. Unfortunately, they're losing more livestock. But also, it's a complex situation because of the increasing demand for things like cashmere. So families are having much more cashmere goats, and they destroy the land, unfortunately, a lot quicker than sheep do. So there's an issue with grassland degradation, these kind of things. So I hope it's quite educational. I hope I can, give an insight into this place and the people who call it home.
And Claire Thomas is back shortly. I will, of course, leave links to the book and the forthcoming projects we're about to talk about on the show page today. Right, where next for our letters? The desert. That's where, the desert. It's been a while, actually, since we've heard from Bob Demers, a.k.a. Bob of the Desert, and I'm pleased to report the Jumping Choirs haven't got him yet. They've tried, but they're just not leaping far enough. Hello, Neil. Your episode with Dale Thomas. This is the one a good few weeks ago now, actually, where Dale ran across a desert himself. And due to some medical issues that happened on that extraordinary ultra-marathon that he might otherwise never have picked up, in a roundabout story in some sense, he found out that he had prostate cancer. So that's the episode that he's talking about, and that was the race. He describes it as the race that saved his life. Anyway, says Bob, that episode struck a nerve, and I can't say a tear or two didn't flow. Bob, it clearly wasn't just the dust in the desert, because I've had a few notes like that following the episode. Just over 3 years ago, I had the dreaded rising PSA. I had prostate surgery, after which it was discovered the cancer had metastasized to one of my lungs. A spot on my lung, said the doctor. A showstopper, to say the least. I know the horse pills Dale spoke of in your show, and the tests and the hormone treatment shot every 3 months to stymie the invader in my body and remind me of how precious life is. Touch wood, the PSA remains under, I think this is under 0.01. Is that right? Yeah, my favourite number for now, he says. I am indeed a changed man, not because of the medicines that threatened my vitality, but also because of the change in my demeanour that somehow has rendered me a more patient and empathetic person. I tend not to sweat the small stuff and have deeper connections now with my family and friends. The love and caring from my partner, Robin, is remarkable. Our relationship is deeper because of this experience. I think it was as tough for her as it has been for me, but she was and continues to be loving and supportive. I'm with Dale. Do that test now, I say, and love the ones you're with. So you fellas out there, says Bob, get tested. Neil, your work is important and profound and of excellent quality. Nurse, the sofa. I fear Bob's making me drag the sofa in for the second time today. I hope someday we meet for a photo walk. I'd love to show you around our beautiful desert. Or perhaps a trundle on the steppes in 2027, mind, because 2026 is France for me. I'm not sure I'll be lucky enough to go back 2 years in a row. But who knows? Who knows, Bob? There's a picture for the show page that Bob sent in. He says, this is a roadrunner on a fence in Tucson. Roadrunner being a bird, not somebody who's climbed up onto a fence. They're more colourful than I imagined. Cheers, Bob. So, well, Bob, first up, goodness, it never fails to, and I think the word really is, inspire me. I'm certainly feeling a sense of real privilege that our fabulous community feel that this is a safe place in which to share, as you have, something so private and so very important. So, first up, thank you. Thank you for that. We had a particular moment talking about feeling safe in this community. And really, of all the years I've been, and I'm going to call it broadcasting, of all the years I've been broadcasting, this project, and I genuinely mean this this project has physically, metaphorically, mentally taken me to places I've never been in the decades and decades that I have either been on the radio, dallianced with radio, or been a podcaster or made documentaries. This project, of them all, has done something to me that is so profound. So I'm going to say thank you. Thank you to you for listening, and thank you, Bob, for sending in this very, very personal letter. But yes, we had a particular moment that in the Zoom meetup for patrons earlier this week when a photograph was shared. Scott Glasgow actually shared this. He mentioned he felt that he was in a place safe enough to share an extraordinary picture that he'd made, which really did need explanation. So to receive your words feels like listening to Scott. And I do feel a definite sense of pride for what we have here in what is otherwise sometimes a very shouty world. On the subject of the Roadrunner bird, which is on the show page, I went off to research the Roadrunner you have in Tucson, wondering if it might be part of the same eccentric family as the one we know from the famous cartoons. Turns out, the real bird does sprint comically across a desert floor, but it doesn't go beep beep, which I found a bit disappointing. And it doesn't spend its life tormenting a coyote either. But I think if it really did go beep beep, Bob, for the second time today I'm going to say this, I'd be on the next plane out with my sound recorder. I really would. I feel like we've had a sort of sabbatical, if that's the right word, from the assignment, that is, the one-word assignment. But if you do feel like you'd like to send something in, because we are at the end of the month, we haven't officially, well, you might be listening to this in the first few days of September, or maybe even later, but if you're listening to this on the day of release, as I say, we are still in August. So I've made it July/August assignment. That's what it ended up being. A quick call to action, as grown-up people in marketing jobs say. The assignment is still open for a few more days. The one-word assignment. Tranquility is the latest word, tranquility. Make a picture that speaks of tranquility. Baton passed. All the details of how to join in are on the website under the assignments tab. Easy to find, easy to enter, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, or simples, as the meerkat says. And there'll be folk around the world now wondering what on earth I'm talking about. Been at those mushrooms again, Neil? No, I haven't. It's an advert. Anyway, this week on The Extra Mile, Claire Thomas is back to answer 3 more stops. And a few other questions too, as it goes.
On this week's Extra Mile.
Tell me you are a diver, because some of the most beautiful waters to dive in are in your country.
Yes, they are. And I did learn to dive in the Red Sea in 2008 and fell in love with diving. And then I went to live in Thailand and dove there and in Australia. But I was never particularly good at it, I have to admit. I'm a bit claustrophobic, so I would go through my air quite quickly. Anyway, I did have my first underwater assignment here last year with the New York Times in the Red Sea, and I forgot that I have ear problems.
Oh. The Extra Mile is our extra show each week, which patrons receive, those who support the show, and I'm always very, very honoured by those who do support the show. For the price of, I think, for the price of a cup of one of those Starbucksy, Costa, other brands available kind of coffees per month, actually, you too can be an extra miler, and all the details are on the website. Also, it's the last, actually, talking of the Extra Mile show this week, it's the last in the week's series of travelling across Europe with one camera, one lens, one notebook and an iPhone, plus a spare pair of pants, obviously. We've been this week on the Extra Mile to Cologne, to Milan, to Budapest, and then didn't quite make Brussels. Today's reflection, which is on the Extra Mile, is called, for reasons that will become very clear, anger management. Anyway, it's all on the extra mile today. Can I borrow your luggoles for a few more moments, though, just ahead of the final letter today and our return to Claire? I'm delighted that this show is supported by arthelper.ai. And if you're not quite sure how they can help you sell your prints online, if you've ever thought, you know what, I've got some fabulous stuff from my travels or my walks just along the path. I'd like to maybe set something up and sell a few prints online, but I haven't got a clue where to start. Well, arthelper.ai can help you. And here's my studio self to enlighten you.
If you've ever thought about selling your photography online but haven't a clue where to start, I think Art Helper could probably help you because it's made for people like us. Here's how it works. You upload a photo, magically and instantly professional content is made for you, such as social media posts, email newsletters, even full Substack articles, all in your own voice. It can also generate hundreds of mock-ups for every image you upload, things like your work framed, so people get a real understanding of what your photograph could look like on their wall. It helps you connect with the right buyers and even suggests pricing based on your market. And unlike most AI tools, it has an art protection guarantee, which means something very important: your images are never used for AI training. Free to try, and Art Helper is giving our listeners a special deal. Go to arthelper.ai, use the code PHOTOWALK and get 30 days free of the pro version. I'll make sure to put a link on the show page, but also now there's a video that my friend Brandon at Art Helper made to help us understand and be able to see how the thing works. So if you go to the show page, you'll see Brandon explaining and showing exactly how this could work for you and I. It's a great way to start selling your art or growing the business you already have. And thank you, arthelper.ai, for your belief in this show.
My sketchbook photographs today have been about pools of light. It's a subject I come back to again and again. It won't be the first, and it certainly will not be the last time I make my sketchbook photographs of just pools of light along the path. You've seen this path. I'm walking... what was that noise? Hope that's not somebody crashing into my car in the car park. Did you hear that? You right, car? Yes, I'm all right. Come back quick. I will. Where were we? I think I was talking about pools of light, wasn't I? Yeah. Let me make a pool of light picture. If I was moving on to something else, I apologise. I was thinking about Car then. Car, you've got to get us to Scotland in a week's time. Right, here we go. Here's a pool of light using my X100V. Get my shadow slightly in this one. 2500 shutter speed, 3.2, 160 ISO. Here we go. Another pool of light sketchbook photograph. Right. A quick letter before we rejoin Claire. It's a journey to Complaints Corner. It's from Gavin Perry in Australia land. Now, as I said a moment ago, next week I travel to Scotland to get ready to receive our guests for the annual Photo Walk September retreat. The last one in September until possibly 2027. And the reason... as you know by now, we're off to Mongolia in September next year because the weather and everything is spot on for our visit, the seasonal weather at that time of year. So we had to jiggly-jaggly, okely-pokely just move things around a bit, which in terms of the Scottish retreat means that we'll be moving it in 2026 to June. Well, it's actually May 31st for the first week, and if the first week fills up, as usual, we'll extend it into a second week, which we've been doing for a number of years now. We have some special new stuff for 2026, just to keep it all fresh, particularly for those who return. And actually, going by weather patterns, it works out quite nicely. But not for everyone, it seems. From Gavin: Hi Neil, I've been a long-time Photo Walk listener. Your retreat episodes from Scotland are always a highlight. Usually listened to while dodging magpies on my morning walks in Sydney. What is it about the bird life in Sydney? Gavin, you have those adorable little fellas that share sugar cubes right from your saucer while you're having your morning coffee by the bay. Or you're being attacked from the air at high velocity by gulls on Cockatoo Island. That's what I found anyway. And now it seems I'd better be careful about the magpies as well. Anyway, says Gavin, for years I've dreamed of joining one of your Scottish retreats. And finally, the stars, they were aligning. My mum's turning 80 in 2026, so I was planning a trip back to the UK in September. Timing, perfect. Scotland with Neil, then south to celebrate with the family and avoid any suspicion I was only there for the whiskey. Then bam, you dropped the 2026 retreat dates, and they're in June. Neil, I almost dropped my Vegemite toast. I mean, moving Scotland to June, what's next? Dropping the song from the end of the show? Oh, you're about to do that too, please don't. Gavin, I did have a few letters about this particular part, the songs at the end of the show. Seems it's part of the sound that brings us our Vive la Défense thingy. So you'll be pleased to know it's staying. And there's one today, as it happens. Anyway, I just had to write, says Gavin, and let you know, says disgruntled from Sydney, you've officially gutted an Aussie fan. Well, that sounds a bit painful. If you happen to move it back to September, I'll be the first to book. If not, well, maybe I'll just stand on a hill when I do visit and play the podcast in the last year to myself. Regards, Gavin. P.S. Potentially your most dramatically disappointed letter from Down Under. I think it possibly is. I feel I've just been super pecked by one of your magpies. Can't you just come and live here for a few months longer, Gavin? You can sleep in the studio if you like. You'll be here for our summer as well, your winter. So look, mate, as you would say, this could all work out in bonza fashion. There was actually a sort of smiley emoji within the letter, so I'm hoping you're not too offended, Gavin. But I am putting you in, or your letter that is, into Complaints Corner, which is a pile it's not large, but there's certainly a few more in there than I was hoping for. It's always fun to receive your letters, though. And, oh, come over earlier. Having spent 2 weeks on Hollybobs gives you a lot of thinking time. And one of the things I'd been thinking about in particular during the days leading up to travelling home was the forthcoming chat with my guest today, Claire Thomas, and this story in particular. The story about the camps set up in Ghana to act as a place of refuge for those who've been accused of witchcraft. Of course, talking about her Altai book is where we started today, and that's an entirely different feeling to the conversation we are about to have. Now, it's not so long ago that Claire was on the show, as I said earlier. It was February time, I think. And of course, the last question in that show is always the why question. That's the last thing that I pose to a guest. I thought, though, for today's interview, I'd steer clear of that as our regular way of concluding a chat, as she'd only just answered it. And instead, I'm going to move by the conclusion of our chat to matters creative and inspirational. And the experience that travel can bring when you see that kind of work on the wall or in books if you go to exhibitions. And immediately after, as is our way this autumn, I will have a play-out song. So Gavin, you can take one step forward with a slightly bigger smile. So you can think about, it's a play-out song, so you can think about what's been discussed today. And that comes from a new act to the show, actually, March the Machine, with a song called One Day. So here's the concluding part of my conversation today with a photojournalist and the explorer, Claire Thomas.
I'm not sure, Claire, if any of the funds from this book will be used for the Ghana project. I suspect the two probably don't meet like that.
No, they'll be separate. Yeah.
So you're campaigning for this at the moment, and I want to know more about this project. It's about women accused of witchcraft who've taken refuge in special camps. When you think of that word, it's sadly not something that's associated with past beliefs. There's a lot more concern about witchcraft in some communities than I would have thought would be happening in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine that today in the 21st century that women and men actually are accused of witchcraft. I mean, not only are they accused, but then they are persecuted, ostracized, sometimes murdered. So it's really bad. But belief in witchcraft is obviously not unique to Ghana.
No.
It's widespread in parts of Africa and other parts of the world. But one of the things that is quite different in Ghana is the prevalence of camps in the north. They could be considered as refuges, but really they are sites of tremendous exploitation. Lots of bad things happens there, and the conditions for the women are really, really bad. So basically, if a woman gets accused of being a witch, she has two choices. She could stay and probably be lynched, as did happen to a 90-year-old woman 5 years ago. Her name is Akua Dente, and she was accused of witchcraft. And then I think the next day she was lynched publicly, and it was like live streamed in Ghana. So this sort of became a rallying cry. It mobilized support for legal reform to try and protect women from this. And of course, it only really affects the most vulnerable women, those who have an education or who have family to defend them. This isn't going to happen. They're not going to end up in these camps. So it's really just a form of violence against women, because also when men are accused, it's believed that men can be witches, but men generally use their power for good. But a woman will use her power for disease. So it's things like, typically it's an elderly woman, often widowed, and she will be accused by family members. It could be something as ridiculous as a failed harvest, a dream. One of the women I met in May, Matisse, she had been in the camp, I think, for 2 or 3 months. And I asked her, who accused her, because often it can be a child, a niece, a very close relative. But for her, it was just a man in her community had a dream. And in his dream, he was being chased by a herd of cows. And one of the cows had the face of this woman. And the next day he accused her of witchcraft. And that was it. The community said, okay, she has to go. So she told me that she was very frightened, obviously. She went into the bush, like the countryside, and she wanted to kill herself. It's really devastating. Then I think her brother took her and they convinced her to go to Gambaga. Now, Gambaga is, I think, the oldest and one of the largest camps. There were 6. Now I think 2 have more or less been closed. They've reintegrated the women. There's 4 camps. But yeah, it's a very sad situation. One of the women I met had been in this one camp for 45 years. Good. No family. Wow. They can't see their family. They're not...
Oh, they're ostracized, essentially ostracized.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you come across the story, Claire? Well, what was it that when... I know you travel around the world in your photojournalism work, but this particular story, how did you come across this?
So I first went to Gambaga camp in 2008. At that time, I was volunteering in another part of Ghana, in the Ashanti region, on a different project. And I think I was just traveling around. And it shows my age, but I used to travel around the world with just a Lonely Planet, or I think it was a Brat guidebook or whatever. And those were like the Bible. Everything you needed to know about the places you were going to visit was in there. And I think Gambaga was mentioned in there. So that's another interesting point about these witch camps, is that they have become a kind of a business. The chief is making money out of people coming to visit. Not that many people go to visit, but of course, when you go, they're quite isolated and they're not easy to find. There's no sign or anything. You have to be with somebody who knows. But they're not like fenced off. It's not like that. You wouldn't know that you're entering a camp. You're just in the village. And then you're walking around a village and then suddenly you're in the camp. So you might wonder why the women can't just leave. But believe, these kind of superstitions are very entrenched. And the women believe that if they leave the camps, the spirits will kill them. So it's like a psychological barrier. They cannot leave. So when you go, you must first visit the chief, and then you pay a fee, and then you can visit the women. So I think to answer your question, I stumbled across it randomly as a tourist, essentially, in 2008. Was very interested and intrigued. and slightly troubled, of course, but I didn't know the whole extent to it then, because when you go, like the women in Ghana, everybody's so cheerful. They welcome you, they sing, they dance. You wouldn't necessarily realize at first sight the tremendous hardship they're living under. And then I went back in 2012 after another volunteer project in Ghana. And then I wanted to talk to the women. And so I had a translator, and the translator, I didn't know at the time, was related to the chief of the village, who is tasked with protecting the women. And I wanted to ask one of the women if she believed herself to be a witch. And the translator refused to translate the question. She was like, obviously, she is a witch. Why would she be here if she wasn't a witch? So, the women didn't even have a chance to speak for themselves. So ever since then, I knew I wanted to, to delve into this in a much deeper way. And then I think it was January this year, I applied for a reporting grant from the Pulitzer Center. And I was very fortunate to be awarded this grant to go back. And then in May, I returned and spent a couple of weeks visiting various camps and learning about the NGOs that are working there, the conditions of the women. I met one woman who had recently been reintegrated into her community. So that was quite uplifting. So there are a lot of efforts to try and reintegrate the women. However, like everything, that's become a business now. So in order for the women to be released back into their community, first of all, the community has to agree. In cases where, the accusation was based on a dream or something like that, it's possible. The church or other advocates or NGOs can generally convince the community to allow the woman back. However, if it's something like the death of a child and the woman is accused of causing the death, then generally there's no hope of them ever leaving the camp. If the community agrees, they can go back, then an exorcism essentially has to be performed by a priest, a traditional priest. And that involves the slaughter of a ram and a guinea fowl, typically, which the woman has to provide. And of course, these women do not have any money. There is no way for them to have any money. The only way they can eat is by performing menial labor, like crushing pine ground nuts in exchange for food, things like that. So that's a huge barrier. So then NGOs and human rights advocates stepped in, and the church also to cover that. Oh, because also in addition to the animals for slaughter, they also have to pay a fee. And the fee is like $100. Which, how are these women going to pay that? Anyway, so after there were other people willing to cover that cost, then the fees went up. So it became, they felt like they were contributing, they were perpetuating this practice. So yeah, that they're trying not to do that anymore. So then the push now is for legal reform. And it seems to be.
Yeah, well, I was going to, you did say that a couple of the camps are closed down.
Yes.
And so there was part of me thinking, okay, is the education process working here?
Yeah.
So there is an education process there.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's on shaky ground quite often.
It's very tough. They're coming up against, ancient beliefs. And in rural communities, there are people who will never let go of that, but it takes time. Yeah. So I had a very good interview with a gentleman called Professor John Azuma. He's the executive director of the Sana Institute in Accra, and he's been working tirelessly on this for years. His own mother was accused of being a witch when he was a child, but because his family are, educated and knowledgeable with these things, she was not exiled, but she did face stigma. So he was telling me that they really believe that the only way to tackle this now is with this legislation, which I think is going through Parliament any day. It's called the Anti-Witchcraft Bill. It was passed in 2023 by the Ghanaian Parliament, and then the president refused to sign it, unfortunately, because there are a lot of people with interests in maintaining this practice.
Well, particularly if it's a business.
It's a business, yeah. They're getting free labor, free labor basically, and money coming in from NGOs, things like that. So anyway, the former president refused to sign. Now it's gone back into parliament under a new administration, and they really believe that the president will sign it this time if it's passed by parliament. It hasn't yet. So it's scheduled for debate any day, really. And then it will give them power to prosecute. Those who accuse can be held accountable. And then a lot of people are hopeful that will be a milestone. Things will slowly start to change, because now it's very common. Women are just blamed for whatever. The professor was telling me that his mother was accused of being a witch because he was doing well in school. And so the other mothers thought that his mother must be taking the intelligence of their children and passing it on to him.
I feel a sense of exasperation in your voice when you recount stories like that. Now, you've been telling the stories of these women, and you've decided to fundraise. And the fundraising that you're doing, actually you decided the mattresses would be the focus of this particular campaign. And I think it's probably obvious why, but I'm going to ask you why you chose that rather than food or shelter or other essentials. I mean, I think that basic premise, the human right to be able to sleep, I've heard that described by NGOs as one of those really important facets of fundraising.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I saw how the women were living, I mean, of course, life is difficult for many people, if not most people in Ghana. There's high levels of poverty, life is difficult, but these women are really in a bad situation, and they live in these tiny huts, no windows, no doors, and no bed. And when I was there, it was coming into the rainy season, and the Reverend Minister who was showing me around and introducing me to the women, she was telling me how when it rains, the women get sick because they're sleeping on the ground and the ground is wet. And I just couldn't imagine that they don't have mattresses. It jumped into my mind also because back in 2012, I did a similar project in the Ashanti region where I was volunteering. And because at that time I was working with a community-based organization supporting women with HIV/AIDS. Again, as a volunteer, I really didn't have much to offer, I have to admit. As a 20-something graduate, I just wanted to help somehow, but I didn't have much to offer really, but I learned a lot. And so I asked the women when we would do home visits, what would be one thing that would kind of make their lives a little bit easier. And a lot of them said they'd love to have a bed, because they're sick to start with, and they sleep on the ground, and that exacerbates their condition and leaves them more vulnerable to infections and stuff. So I thought, well, that's probably a really good thing that I could try and do. So I raised money and bought 77 beds. And then I went back in 2014 and we bought them and delivered them to all the women. And it was very well received. So anyway, I thought I could try and replicate that for the women in Gambaga, because in some of the other camps, they had mattresses. A woman, I think they said she was Danish, had raised money and gone back and bought the mattresses. But in Gambaga, they don't. And the women, a lot of them are elderly. And can you imagine your grandmother, being kicked out of her home overnight, losing everything, losing her family. The families ostracize them, their kids won't go and visit them. They believe, once they're accused, they believe they're witches. They can't ever see them again. To live in those conditions and not even a mattress to sleep on. So that's what I'm hoping to do, is to raise enough money for that. But also I'm trying to raise some extra funds so that I can give each of the women a little bit of money so that they can set up small businesses. It wouldn't take much. The church is already doing quite a lot there, the Presbyterian church. They're teaching them how to make soaps and jewelry. I bought some beautiful beads from the women. So they have this mentality, and I think they could do a lot if they just had a little bit of money to get them going, so they could buy the goods that they need, the items they need to get started. So we're hoping to raise a little bit extra, and then be able to get. There's about 80 women in Gambaga. It changes all the time. Of course, when I was there, a new woman arrived.
This is clearly more than simply journalism. It's advocacy as well, isn't it? Your photographs, I would imagine, or are they being used to change ideas, to perhaps talk to villagers, to chiefs, to suggest, look, this is what's happening? Is it being helped by your educative photography?
I hope so. I mean, that's always been my goal with photography, is to be able to try and do something positive with it, to inform, and change people's perceptions. And in Ghana, I gave access to the photos to the Sane Institute, and they actually used them they did a huge exhibition with the portraits and like with the slogans, calling for an end to violence against women and for a passing of the bill. So I was very, very proud actually to see the pictures being used for something like that in Ghana with, local organizations and local people. So, we can always hope, but then my goal now is to get more exposure in mainstream media outlets for this story. So it's been published in Ghanaian media outlets, and also, just a couple of days ago, it was published in it's called More to Her Story online. It's a brilliant publication. I love what they do. Everything is focused on women and girls' stories, and they do terrific work. So I'm very pleased to see the pictures and the story there. And now I'm also working on it for other outlets. So I'm just trying to get, as much exposure as possible. My dream would be that this would help get the bill passed. Of course, that's a bit of a pipe dream, but you never know. Like, the more pressure, the better.
It's extraordinary work. It really is. I always look for an excuse, it seems, to come back and talk to you a little bit more. And I think I will come back to you and talk about your environmental pictures at some stage, because that's a whole new conversation in itself. And I don't want to do it a disservice by just rushing across it. So there we go. I've got a whole section here that gives me an excuse to talk to you once again. But I at the end of my conversations, I do ask a question that simply asks why. You might remember it or not, I don't know, in terms of why you do photography. What drives you? Now, it wasn't really that long ago that I asked you that question, so I thought, well, let's change the approach to the last question of our interview and see if you can unpick this one instead. When somebody closes your books or leaves one of your exhibitions or visits your website and sees this incredible plethora of work and different stories that you tell, what's a thought that you hope they may carry with them as an experience after having seen your pictures and your view of the world? The beautiful view of it in your environmental pictures, and the challenging view of it when it comes to stories like we've just been talking about, and the incredible, the stunning work in Mongolia. I mean, there's this. It's such a range, isn't it? But what do you hope people come away with thinking?
I hope that my work inspires people to be curious, and my dream is that my pictures would have an impact on somebody in the way that other people's photographs have impacted me throughout my life, and really are the reason I have traveled and explored the world, basically just because of pictures I saw and I wanted to go and see for myself. So I hope that, some of my work can do that and also dispel some common myths, like my work from Iraq. It's very common to think of Iraq as a conflict zone, but I did a whole series about Iraq through a different lens because I wanted to challenge that misconception that it's just an area of conflict. It's such a beautiful place. So I hope people take the time to see the nuance in these different places and the different stories, and also be inspired to be curious to learn more.
I never meant to cross the line. Never meant to let you get into my paradise. Wish I could put it all behind me, but it's stuck inside my mind and I can never take it back. For
That's March the Machine and One Day. Wherever we travel with a camera, whether it's the places I visited to make my travel log of Europe in the extra mile this week, or the wide, windswept steppe of Mongolia, where Claire Thomas spent time with eagle hunters for her remarkable book, which I'll link to today, of course. The act of making pictures, as I see it, binds us to a place in a way that nothing else really can. That's the experience I've had across the last couple of weeks. Writing does that for me too. You wouldn't believe the power of observation that I've found in my notebook over the last couple of weeks. But a camera, and I know this is one of those photographic cliches, it really does slow us down. It invites us to notice and connect with how we are. And I hope today's stories from Claire, not always easy ones, have helped you or inspired you to realise just how lucky we are to be invested and interested in this wonderful thing called photography and walking, of course. There's a trip to be made for me going north from Thatchamville to beautiful Inverness, the Black Isle and the lochs and the glens of the Highlands. Oh, so looking forward to it. And we'll have a show, of course, from Scotland in the forthcoming weeks. Now, just a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. We'll keep building this wonderful community of kindness in the photographic and walking world together. My thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT, who'll also be working on the new quarterly Reflections zine that is coming out. Sorry, hang about, back up. Wait a moment, you can't just throw that in as a cursory mention. Well, for the moment, I am a watch this space thingy. My thanks also to Andrea Gilpin, who keeps a watchful eye over Instagram, as does Kelly Mitchell for Facebook, to Kelvin Brown, who's at the helm of the Flickr group, and to Michael Brennan, who compiles the music of the show onto a Spotify playlist. So if you like what you hear on the show, then you can find it all in one playlist. Write a postscript for the show. Today it's from Yann Arthus-Bertrand, a French photographer and filmmaker, best known for his sweeping aerial images of the Earth. I've got a beautiful book of his, using his camera as a witness to both the planet's beauty and fragility. And there's been much fragility, I suppose, discussed on the show today. He also talks about the real honesty of being a witness with a camera. Whatever that subject is, be it war or the world or the shadows cast across the understory in the paths or on the paths as we walk. He said, a photographer is first and foremost a witness. My photographs bear witness before being works of art, because I try to show the world as it really is.
What's there to hold in the light of this moon? My mind keeps searching, but my heart decides thoughts can be cruel. They're not mine to hold. The space unravels when you let go.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.